channel. Today I'd like to share with you a little bit more about headstands. Why headstands? Actually, a few ideas came up to me as to what will my next video be in the course of the last week or so. I did some filming, but I decided that I wasn't quite happy with like some of the ideas that I came up with. So I eventually decided that I'd like to do a video on headstands. And why headstands? It's because it was one of the asanas that I really wanted to get to from the start of me practicing yoga here about 6 to 7 months ago. I remember being really impressed when I saw like people in the class who could do this posture, the headstand posture. I know, of course, like the whole yoga practice is not about comparing yourself with others as well, but I felt that it was something that I needed a little bit more practice, a little bit more focus, and also hopefully was trying to get there one day. And in the course of the last week, I managed to do it and I was really happy. I tried a couple of variations as well just to make sure that I was really stable in it, or rather I started getting a little bit more courage just to go into the posture independently. And of course, in the course of the last week, I fell as well twice, but with each fall, I felt also more comfortable with knowing that when I fall, I actually don't injure myself if I fall carefully or if I know what I'm supposed to look out for. And I felt that it would be nice for me to also do a video just to share with some of you some of the tips in which I've gathered that actually worked for me and hopefully will be able to work for you as well if you're also looking into getting into your first headstand practice. Okay, so before we actually get into the physical practice itself, I think it's quite important for us to go through like a couple of theory tips or theory items just to make sure that we get a good understanding of how the posture should look like before we go into the posture itself. It takes a little bit of patience to get through the theory portion and to have it ingrained in you as you translate it also to the physical practice. But what's really important is not to rush into the pose. I think it's very easy for a lot of us to just want to rush into a particular posture, just thinking that our body is able to cope with it, we are able to do it. But truth is, we don't do this every day, or reality is most of us don't actually do this every day. So if we rush into it, we will probably just end up injuring ourselves just because we don't actually know how we look like because we can't see ourselves. So let's get into it. So the first tip that I like to talk about, or rather the first thing that actually really worked for me, was to get your foundations right. I think it's very difficult for some of us to get the concept of how the headstand should actually be balanced versus how in reality it actually works. So if we were to look at someone on headstand, we naturally think that, okay, there is the head that is on the ground, and you would think that the head being like the biggest thing that is on the ground, that it will be the anchor. But honest truth is there is actually very little weight being placed on the head. And what I mean by having a good foundation is really making sure that your posture is correct from the very start, in that the width of your shoulders firstly should be as a gauge, the width as to how far apart your arms should be with each other. So I think it's a little bit into body anatomy in that if, let's say, you have a good foundation laid out in this manner, you are actually going to be in a really stable position. And what you then have to do is first try and grab both your hands on your elbows and then stretch forward. Sometimes it can get a little bit uncomfortable with the skin here, as if, let's say, you glide on your mat. What I think works for me is I get a sensing of how far it is, and then I glide forward, and then I adjust a little bit just to make sure that it's comfortable and there's no like excess skin or flesh that is getting into the way. What's most important also is to be really comfortable with this anchor that you've created, this triangle. Because most of the weight that is being supported, or at least most of where the weight should be supported from, is actually your arms, your shoulders, and also the opening that you will create later on when you're in your headstand position. The other thing, once you've gotten the width in position, what you want to do also is not to open your hands, okay? Because if you open your hands, just think about it as how the 3 points that's actually on the ground, think of it as 3 points. Your elbows, the hands that is stably, firmly placed on the ground, and the other elbow. If you were to open it too wide, what you're trying to do is then using your head to try and be that balance. But you want to avoid that, or at least it didn't quite work for me when I found that I was opening my hands a bit too wide. I was just trying to use my head as the third point of contact. So for some teachers, they would actually recommend you to put your thumbs really close to each other. I think this creates a little bit of instability for me as well, and what I like to prefer is actually having it open a little bit, but at least still keeping the thumbs really close to each other, such that when you put your head towards your hands, there is that support that you're trying to push your head towards the hands, and your hands are actually trying to like hold it there. So yes, foundation being correct is very important, and this is my tip number 1. Before I move on to tip number 2, I think it's important for me to also explain why it's important not to balance on your head. That's because you're putting a lot of strain on your neck as well, and that's not really what you want to achieve, because putting strain on your neck is not something that would be, number 1, very comfortable, and number 2, you may end up injuring yourself. And it is definitely not what you want to do, especially if what you're aiming towards is staying in that headstand position for a really long time and to just breathe comfortably into it. And that really should be the end goal, in that the posture should come comfortable. You can stay there for a good amount of time without actually feeling too much strain in your back or in your neck and your spine. Okay, so the second tip that I would like to share with you, or the second thing that really worked for me, is that when you put your head in between your arms, what you want to do is to make sure that your chin is tucked in. Of course, what you don't want to do is to tuck it too in as well, because you start feeling a little bit uncomfortable. But what you want to definitely avoid is not to keep your head up like this. Why so? It's because what we're trying to do is to try and keep the spine and the neck in one straight line, just so that we actually don't make it feel uncomfortable, or there's not too much weight or strain that is being caused at your back, against your back, on your back rather. Moving on to tip number 3, I think what is really important is, once you've got your foundations right, once you know that you need to keep your chin tucked in, it is also important not to do this, in that you are actually letting the weight fall down with your shoulders. It is important to keep your shoulders firm and straight, because what you want to do is definitely have the weight being spread out across your shoulders, but at the same time through the opening of your armpits. I know it sounds a little bit crude sounding, but what you want to do is making sure that the weight is being held up appropriately, and it's being held up from a very, very strong and stable position. That brings me to tip number 4 as well, in that there needs to also be a strong core position that you actually hold as you are either going up or staying up straight, because what you don't want to do is you also don't want to be like bent in either way. It will create unnecessary stress on your spine, because we are in an inversion position, and we just want to make sure that the weight is really balanced in a very, very stable and in a very comfortable position. So make sure that after you have your chin tucked appropriately in, you also want to make sure that there is proper distance, or you make sure that you don't slouch or you don't push your shoulders up towards your ears. You want to bring it as far down through the opening of your armpits. Okay. So moving on to tip number 5, the very last tip before we get into the practice, is that as you're trying to get into the posture, you don't want to jump into it. What you want to do is to first align your hips as close and as straight a line to the position of your shoulders, just to make sure that there is this inclined position being set up. Of course, we'll go through it later on in the position, but you want to make sure that your hips that is up in the air is in line with your shoulders, okay, such that you have a straight back first before you try to tuck your knees in with control and try to move up slowly into the position. So I think it's enough rambling that I had, but I think it's also really important that we keep in mind all these tips or all these bits of information that is key and core to having a good headstand practice before we actually go into the practice itself, which we are going to do just in a minute. yeah, there you go, the headstand posture. Of course, I'm still not super stable when I go up or come down, but that is something which I'm currently still practicing. And what's important to know is, because this is an inversion pose, it's very important that when you come down, you don't come up straight away, because this could make your blood go in the other direction really fast, and for some people with low blood pressure as well, you may start to feel a little bit dizzy. So it's important just to do a, I don't know if this is called a counter pose, but more likely just to make sure that your body just gets back into a more neutralized position before you slowly get back up. So what you want to do is to bend forward, keep your head down, and stay there for about 5 breaths before you slowly lift your whole body up. Of course, I didn't just get into this pose without the wall starting from day one, so it's very important that you, if let's say you're doing this for the first time, to actually have someone who is a yoga teacher or who actually knows what they are doing to be supporting you, just so that if you were to fall, they'll be there to catch you or to spot you, and that you wouldn't be injured from just trying to learn how to do this pose. I would say start against the wall with someone supporting you, spotting you. The next time that you try and do it, just make sure that you don't kick yourself up, which is what I did when I first started. It was very hard a habit to correct. Try to bring your knees as close to you as possible before you start trying to lift your feet up into the actual position. Everything is to be done with control, and of course when you come down, you do so with control as well, and everything to be done elegantly, so that there wouldn't be any jerks that would potentially cause or be a trigger for a injury to come. So I hope you enjoyed this particular video. Of course, if you do like it, please give it a thumbs up, please subscribe to my channel, or if you would like to have more similar videos, do let me know, and feel free to comment in the comment section below. And not forgetting, it's once you're more stable into the headstand, or if you have a little bit more courage to make sure that you don't actually fall, you might want to try to do a couple of variations like shifting of the weight, and bringing down one foot, or bring your feet down to 90 degrees, and then coming up, back up again, and then going all the way down. So there are a lot of variations when it comes to headstands, and of course with each also comes with a little bit of maturity in terms of the practice. So I hope you enjoy this practice, and I hope that you will also be able to get there. Or if you have any more further tips, please feel free to let me know via the comment section below. So till next time, bye!